Hi guys, welcome back to Real Estate Investing with Alex Deacon. I personally am not Alex Deacon, but here with me is Alex Deacon, the Deacon of Real Estate. Alex, what's going on, good sir?
Hi, I'm Alex Deacon, the Deacon of Real Estate. How are you?
I'm here.
Good.
I'm here to learn. I'm here to pick your brain like everybody else loves to do.
I'm here to learn too. I mean, honestly, you learn by teaching.
There you go.
Yeah, you do. You learn by teaching, and I learn things from you, even though you're not a wealth of knowledge in the real estate industry. We come up with some topics sometimes where you just start us off, and then we bounce off it, and it turns out to be a good, informative podcast. So I want to thank the listeners for listening, and I want to thank Adam for being such a good host.
Well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. It pays to be a D student every once in a while.
Group hug.
Group hug.
Or how about we just pound Wonder Twin Powers?
Fist pound? Yeah, there we go. We'll too sweet me later on.
Boom.
3 people might get that reference. But, Alex, today, what do you say we talk about Section 8 versus non-Section 8?
Sure.
Let's talk about that. That seems like a juicy topic, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Section 8 was, I was referred to, that's housing, like Section 8 housing. But there's also a term, Section 8, and I was telling Adam, I think that's some sort of military term for like somebody who's mentally unfit. So it actually is. So we're not talking about military, mentally unfit people that are discharged from the Army. We are talking about Section 8 housing, which is a government-subsidized housing, and there's a couple different ones in Pittsburgh. There's Pittsburgh Section 8, and then there's Allegheny County, so it's Allegheny County Section 8. They're totally different entities. I think they both kind of use the same criteria and how they run their operation, but they are different.
Now, would this be a similar blueprint in different cities? So if somebody might be listening and they're not in the Pittsburgh area, would it be, say, in Erie? Would it whatever county Erie is in, like maybe Erie County and Erie, Pennsylvania? Would they still have Section 8 in different states? Is it still referred to as Section 8?
I would assume it is. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
But the way it is in Pittsburgh is if somebody has what they're called as vouchers. So somebody has to have a voucher, meaning you just don't call Section 8 and say, hey, I want to rent a Section 8 apartment. You call Section 8 and say, hey, I don't make enough money. Here's my situation. Can I be involved with the Section 8 program? Do I qualify? So it's not up to you, the landlord. It's up to, so if a tenant says, do you rent Section 8? The basic answer is maybe. It just depends on how much rent Section 8 will pay me for this apartment. So, because Section 8 has menu pricing. Okay? And I think it's based on, so is it an efficiency? Is it a 1-bedroom? Is it a 2-bedroom? Is it a 3-bedroom? Is it an apartment? Is it a townhome? Is it a single-family home? Are utilities included or not included? Are some utilities included? Are some utilities not included? And they have menu pricing. Now, I think they have some lateral flexibility on that pricing. I'm not the expert in Section 8, but my staff, we manage about 650 units. I'd say about 50 to 70 are Section 8. So if you have a $2,000 townhome for rent, that's a 3-bedroom, Section 8 is not going to pay $2,000. They're going to have a limit. It might be $900.
Okay.
So that's why if somebody says, do you rent Section 8? And our standard answer is yes, but it depends on the property. Some properties won't qualify for Section 8 because the price is too high. So let's say, what if the tenant says, well, I'll pay the difference? You can't pay the difference. It's not legal to pay the difference.
Gotcha.
So let's say that tenant makes X amount of dollars per year. Section 8 will give them, based on whatever formula they have, will give the landlord $500 in rent. The tenant will be responsible for the other $4.
Okay.
So if it's a $900 rental, the tenant's responsible for $4. Section 8 is responsible for $5. Sometimes Section 8 is responsible for $850, and the tenant's responsible for $50. Sometimes it depends on their finances. But if you rent something for $2,000 and Section 8 is going to pay $5, and the tenant's supposed to pay $4, and then the tenant says to you on the side, "Hey, I'll pay the other $1,100," that's not allowed. And that tenant can get kicked off Section 8, and you can get in trouble for that. I know it's done all the time. We don't do it at Mace Property Management because our license is on the line. People skate around it all the time. I don't think I would advise it.
Do not make tenant deals, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the pros and cons of Section 8?
And I did look briefly. It is Section 8 nationwide, so it should be a blanketed statement.
Okay, so it's Section 8 nationwide. The pros of Section 8. Now, this is on paper. The pros are, believe me, this is from vast experience in dealing with Section 8. The pros are, you get your money guaranteed from the government, right? It's guaranteed. And you're always going to have a tenant. These are the pros that are, I guess, potentially preached by people who don't do it every day. You're always going to have a tenant. You're always going to get your money. Okay. The cons, which there are many, and you could tell I'm not a proponent of Section 8.
Yeah.
The cons are, you're renting to an element of society, and this is black or white or Chinese or it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. This element of society, in most cases, this is in my opinion, they expect something that like this is owed to them. Okay, and what happens is they don't respect in many cases. And if someone wanted to argue with me, they come in my office and I'll argue with you till I'm blue in the face because we've had hundreds and hundreds of dealings with Section 8 tenants versus a non-Section 8 tenant in a lower crime area.
Right.
Because most Section 8 is in a medium to higher crime area. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these tenants, they got nothing to lose. They have nothing that if they destroy your house, you can't go after them. What are you going to? How are you going to? What you can't squeeze water from a rock.
Right.
And they feel that something's owed to them. So I think the downside potentially of Section 8 is way more than it's worth.
And like you said too, this is we're not being biased on anything other than irresponsibility. But at the end of the day, that just
and this is a society problem. This is not these folks' fault. This is how these folks who are on Section 8 or live in a poor community. The government has given them everything, and you've basically, in my opinion, you've handicapped them because you're given everything, and they don't have any incentive to just move forward, and no one's really helping them. Mm-hmm. This doesn't help them. Mm-hmm. This whole program doesn't help. It's designed to help someone who's down on their luck.
Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be short-term
and we
fixes.
have some really good Section 8 tenants.
Yes, sir.
We have folks that have regular jobs, they're down on their luck, and they are just working hard, and they're using government money that's there to help these people. And I love Section 8 when it works like that. Yep. That's the way it's supposed to work. Yep. And then eventually these people are making more money, and they get off Section 8, and they become a part of society, and they flourish financially and live the American dream. Mm-hmm. That's the way it's supposed to work. Mm-hmm. That's not the way it works in reality.
Yep. Too many people use it as a constant crutch. Instead of using it as a temporary Band-Aid, people are using it as a constant crutch.
Forever.
Yeah.
So the downside is, well, here's what I'll get from a pushback from maybe a newbie who doesn't know. Well, then I'll tell Section 8 on them if they destroy my house. Okay. And
yeah, like what's going to happen?
And then what happens?
But yeah,
they send out the Section 8 police. No, they don't send out the Section 8 police.
It's not like the Spanish Inquisition?
There is no Section 8 police, man. We've had people just... Here, I'll give you a good example. Every year with Section 8, there's a initial inspection before you rent. Before you rent, there's an initial inspection on the house. Mm-hmm. So when somebody calls and says, is this house... Will you rent Section 8? Yes and no, right? We talked about this. Yes, if it's in the proper price range. Mm-hmm. And... yes, if the house will pass Section 8. Why wouldn't it pass Section 8? You might have some peeling paint outside. You might have peeling paint on the porch outside. You might have railings outside that the spindles are just a little bit wider than what's quote-unquote safe, because you don't want children to be able to get their head in there. You might have windows that are old wooden windows. They open and close, but they don't quite lock without a little bit of struggle. Or just, I'm saying the house is a little older. It may not pass Section 8.
It's not.
So,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
why? So if somebody calls and says, "I want to look at this house," well, is it Section 8? We'll say this particular house is not, because there's too many problems there. The owner's not willing to spend $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 to make it Section 8 ready. So then we don't show them the house because it's a waste of everybody's time.
So a quick question. So Section 8 guidelines for housing are different than other something you might flip or something that you just might rent out to yourself.
Yes,
Okay.
and they vary.
I didn't know that.
They vary from inspector to inspector.
Good to know. I didn't know that either.
So we'll get an inspection. So the story is, you have the initial inspection. The tenant brings their voucher. The voucher says, "I'm approved for a 3-bedroom in Pittsburgh." Not Allegheny, Pittsburgh.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we're in Pittsburgh. So, okay, let's go look at the house. They like the house. Here's an application. They fill out the application. We run a criminal check. We run a background check. We check with their previous landlord. If they're employed, we make sure that they are employed. We get proof of income, all that stuff. We run them just like we do any other candidate. 99 times out of 100, they don't have good credit. They have some poor backgrounds and stuff. That's just the way it is. That's why they're on Section 8. That's why they need help. So we don't have a problem with that. We don't want people with criminal backgrounds and things like that. We say no to that. So we rent to them, and they're there for a year. Next year, we have to have a new inspection. Inspector comes out, and this inspector is a different inspector, and he finds 10 other things wrong. And it happens all the time. 10 things that weren't wrong last year, they're the same, but now my owner has to spend $1,000, $2,000 to make it
simply
right.
because the inspector's different.
Okay? Or we've had people, hey, the window's broke. Obviously, it was broken from the inside. Obviously, the kitchen cabinet door that was ripped off is not something like, I've owned a house for 30 years. I've never had a kitchen cabinet door just rip off.
Nah.
Or a bathroom door with a hole punched in it. Well, guess who has to pay for that? Because it won't pass the inspection.
Right.
You're going to ask the tenant to pay for it who doesn't have any money to begin with? So you have to fight with that tenant, and then you have to fight with the inspector that comes through and says, well, you need a new door, you need the new cabinet door, the new door to the bathroom that has a hole in it. I want all new outlets on this first floor because they're only 2-prong, and I didn't notice them last time. They should be 3-prong, so on and so forth and so on. And then we've had this happen. Had owners go ahead and do that, do $5,000 worth of work. Then the tenant leaves in 3 months.
Oh.
How about that? Because they don't have to stay after. From what I understand, they get a 1-year lease, and after that, it's basically month to month. So you, the owner, have to spend $500, $5,000, whatever it takes to pass that Section 8 inspection. Then the tenant can move. So you tell me what's better. I don't hate Section 8. I'm just telling you it's not the way my business model wants to run, and it's not going to be centered around Section 8. Right. It's just not.
Now, is there, and obviously you can't be biased towards age either, but is there something with Section 8 tenants where is it more problematic with the younger generation versus the older generation, or is it just tends to be problems?
It's a process and a system that's flawed.
Gotcha.
It really is. These aren't bad people.
Absolutely
Section
not.
8 is not a bad idea. The folks at Section 8 are probably overworked and understaffed because they're not proficient at all. At all. They screw up checks on a regular basis. They'll screw up inspections. They'll send out an inspection 1 year and it's different. The next year it's different. Completely, it's as much of a problem working with the government agency as it is working with a tenant who's destroying your property. There's no different. I don't want to work with either. Right. That's how bad I don't like either.
Right.
But we have some really good Section 8 tenants, but you just have to know how to pick those tenants and make sure they're a right fit.
Right.
Make sure they qualify. Make sure they have a good landlord reference. That they've been at their place for 5 years, and the reason they're moving is because they just want something bigger, closer to home, better school district for their kids.